Christmas is past. It's gone, it's done, won't be around for another, Christmas season, 11 months. And I thought I'd take a few minutes and kind of just reflect upon Christmas that we've just been through. And in the liturgical season, we have 4 high points where we gather, where something fundamental to our faith occurs. First, we have the birth of Christ, our Christmas celebration, where we gather in the stable and celebrate the new hope that has been born into the world. And we then have the death of Christ, Easter, in which we stand at the foot of the cross and behold the sacrifice that was made on our behalf. Thirdly, the resurrection, Easter morning when the empty tomb confronts us. And finally, Pentecost, where God, through tongues of flame, empowers the church to become the instrument of the divine will, bringing the message of salvation to the world. Now, these 4 points, in many ways, parallel our individual faith journey. The hope at first hearing the message, the awe that another person would take on suffering for us, the surprise and joy and confusion when we accept that the tomb is empty and the promise has been fulfilled. And finally, the personal imperative to share the story and live the message. Now, everyone follows their own path and has their own reaction to each of these milestones. And equally important, we realize we do not hit each one of these points once and move on, or even in order, but we come back to them and encounter and confront them again and again and again in our lives. As we change, as we age, as we have new life experiences, our understanding of these events changes as well. How we understand, experience Christmas as a child is different than we understand it as an adult and yet again as a parent. Christmas as a child, as we heard a minute ago, is usually a time of wonder, a time of excitement, with trees and lights, decorations, gifts, family, food, and most of all, expectations. It is a lot to take in as a child, and the expectations of a child are frankly very self-centered. Yes, there is this hubbub around the church, and taking a role in the Christmas pageant and wondering, what exactly is a shepherd? And why am I carrying this funny staff? But at this point, it's still mostly about the party. As we grow into our teenage years, we begin to understand the cycle of the liturgical calendar and see the connections between Christmas and Good Friday and Easter and Pentecost. But yet, even as a teenager, for most, the impact has not yet become real. It is still a story around which we have built a festival. And as we grow into adulthood, Christmas becomes an ever-changing perspective. Until one has experienced grief, till one has suffered, until one has experienced disappointment, it is merely a great story, with shepherds and wise men and mangers and donkeys and angels all flitting around. But as inevitably happens in life, we will experience grief and suffering, and our perspective changes. For now, we begin to understand what hope is, and what hope means, and what hope holds for us. And in Christmas, we can encounter and find the rebirth of hope. We well know the narrative of birth, life, death, and resurrection. And each Christmas, we come around to this starting point, to the birth of hope again. To understand Christmas is to understand hope and the beginning of the fulfillment of promises. And in Christmas, we find Jesus in the context of his family. Just as for most of us, Christmas is very much a family event today, more so than any of the other high points of our faith and our experience and the cycle of our faith. And here we have a family beset by troubles, threatened by Herod, exiled in Egypt, living in a strange land. And as a family, we find our own first connection with Jesus. As children, we can understand father, mother, child. As adults and parents, we can infer the anxiety that Joseph and Mary must feel. I mean, here they are, relegated to a stable. Mary's about to give birth, and she's going, what's going on here? A stable? Really? But that's the way it is. And so we encounter Christmas year after year, rarely the same way twice. More children at the table, fewer children at the table. An empty chair where a parent once sat. New friends we have invited to share Christmas because they have no one close to go to, always in the giving. The challenge is to always find the hope and the promise. Sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it is difficult. We will return again and again to Christmas, sometimes with sheer joy, sometimes with sadness, sometimes confused, but always knowing that Christmas is not just what God brought to us, but what we have brought to Christmas. And as we encounter and confront the birth of Jesus, we do so in many ways. But fundamentally, we are always called to understand hope, to reach hope, to find hope, and the promise and the commitment, and to not be afraid. Amen.